I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and this is the new Fiio FT5. This is the new headphone from Fiio, and as far as I understand, this is Fio's first planar magnetic headphone. It's got a 90mm planar driver inside, and well, apart from being one of their first, I mean, they've done headphones in the past, but they're kind of really just hitting their stride with headphones, and the FT5 is, I think, a sign of good things to come, but if I'm perfectly honest up front, I don't know that they're quite there yet. And so today we're going to talk about it. So for the past couple of months, honestly, I've had the FT5 on hand. I've been listening to it and comparing it with some other headphones in its price range. And today we're going to talk about what I think about this headphone, who maybe it's for, and maybe who it's not for. Quick shout out to Fiio, by the way, for sending this guy in for review. If you want to check out the FT5, I've got them linked in the description down below. But other things to mention about the headphone, not a whole lot. It's $450 just to set your expectations on price. And I've got a couple of other planar headphones in and around that price range that we're going to compare this thing to. So without further ado, let's dive to the table. We'll talk about what comes inside the box, which is a lot, as is typical per Fiio. We'll talk about the build quality, comfort, then we'll talk about the sound and get into those direct comparisons with some others. So here you go. This is the spread that you get inside the box. And like I mentioned, Fiio is always really, really good with their accessories package. And let's just start with this carry case, which is frankly quite nice. It's molded so it will hold the headphones very securely. Now, unfortunately, like most carry cases, and I wish this wasn't the case, but like most carry cases, you will have to remove the cables before putting the headphones into here. And I guess maybe just to highlight, I don't have a cable on this thing now, but this is not a Bluetooth headphone. You will need to use a cable. And again, unfortunately, the case won't let you store it that way. On the fortunately side, they do have some nice little, storage compartments here, not only to hold the cable, but also the little cable accessories, which I will highlight now in a bit. Actually, let's just do it now. So this is the cable that the FT5 comes with. And I gotta say, this is actually a really nice cable. One of the nicer cables that I've seen come with a headphone stock. Not only is like the behavior pretty nice, as you can kind of see here, it's maybe a little bit on the wide side. As you can see, it's like a double wide there. You can see it's a little bit narrower that way, which is generally not what I like. I like a cylindrical cable, I suppose, rather than a flat cable. But apart from that, you can see the behavior is quite nice. It is cloth covered, but it's not overly stiff. And I didn't really have any issues with microphonics, although I could see that that might be a concern with a cloth covered cable typically. It does terminate in a standard 3.5mm, dual 3.5mm entry. So if for whatever reason you don't like this cable, you could swap it out with another cable very, very easily. Or if you damage this cable, destroy it, and you need a new one, you're not gonna have any issues getting a replacement. Or if you wanted to use this cable on another headphone, you could definitely do that too. The other thing that is worth highlighting about this cable is down here at the termination. So I've got a standard 3.5mm connection on this, but let's say you don't like 3.5mm. Let's say you like 6.3mm. Well, of course, they've got the standard 3.5 to 6.3 adapter. That is not that interesting. What is interesting is that this is including Fio's swappable terminations. And let's see if I can even remember how to do this. So you basically just twist off the top here, and then once you have that sleeve pulled down, you can pull out the termination, reach over here where you've got your balanced connector, and turn this into a balanced headphone by just swapping in the 4.4mm connector. I'm going to screw this sleeve back on, and now we've got a balanced headphone cable. And let's say you didn't have a 4.4mm balanced amplifier. You've got an XLR. Well, they've come with an adapter like with that too. So you plug the 4.4 into the XLR adapter, and now you've got a balanced XLR cable. I think it's actually really clever the way that they've done this. And I think it works especially well here on a headphone versus just like the typical pigtails and stuff that you get on a lot of little pigtail adapters, I should say, that you get on a lot of other headphones. I like this much better. So generally just a real big fan of the cable. I think the length also works really well for me. It's probably about a 5-foot cable. So maybe a little bit on the short side for desktop use, but for my desktop use, actually really good. And also not too cumbersome for portable use. Okay, that's the cable stuff. Let's push that to the side so we got a little bit more room. We'll talk about the headphone next, but I did want to quickly mention that it actually comes with two different sets of ear pads. You see, I've got the set of ear pads that are on here, as well as the second set here. And they're not just you know, a spare pair just in case something goes wrong with these. These are actually different pads. The materials here on this pad is like a velour or a micro suede. I would describe this more of a micro suede, whereas these are kind of your typical protein leather pads. The protein leather pads maybe feel a little bit on the thicker side, a little bit on the plusher side, but I prefer the texture and the feel of the micro suede on my face, so that's what I've been using. There is also a little bit of a sound difference between them, but interestingly, not a big difference in the way they graph. I've got them graphed. They're on Squiggly if you want to check it out, link in the description. But yeah, not a big difference in the way they graph, more of a difference in the way they sound. And to be honest, it's been a couple of months since I even listened with this pad, so I couldn't even remember to tell you what they sound like. We will talk about the sound in this guy though in a bit. But let's finish up real quickly by talking about these headphones, the build quality and the comfort on these guys. Just, I guess, a quick wrap up on the pads though. You can see that it is plenty deep here on the back, a little bit shallower on the front, but still pretty deep. And then the space that you've got for your ear is not massive, but plenty of space, IMO. And then they've also got the L&R indicators, which is pretty nice. Just so when you pick up the headphones, obvious, easy to see, although of course the asymmetrical design of the pads is also a tell if you're used to seeing that. Okay. All right, let's talk about the build on the headphone itself. And this is where I'm frankly really impressed with what Fio's done. Again, for this being one of their first headphones and their first ever planar headphone, the build on this guy is like way better than any of the other brands out there making $450 planar headphones. All right, I'm gonna pull in some examples. The build on this guy, I'll just say up front, is way better than like the Hifimans or the Moondrops. Fantastic job. The material all around here is just this nice, I'm gonna guess a milled aluminum. Really, really nice ear cups. The headband also is metal. If there is plastic on this, I don't exactly know where. Maybe this little bracket here is plastic, but the band here is, I'm guessing, a steel. Yeah, just really fantastic materials all the way around. And I think it actually looks pretty good too. You know, it's pretty tastefully done versus some of the other Fio headphones I've seen. Not so tastefully done, IMO again, but this one I think looks pretty good. Now here are where you've got the dual 3.5mm entries that I mentioned. And again, they've done a good job of angling them forward so that they actually don't get in the way. They don't hit my shoulders at all because especially actually they're kind of pushed far back. And I guess as I'm talking about that, I'll throw it on my head and kind of give you an idea. Obviously I don't have the cable attached, but you can use your imagination. You can see the way that this is back here. The problem that a lot of headphones have is if they have a 3.5mm connector here and then the cable's coming straight down, you end up with the hard parts of the connector being like way down here, and then that can interfere and touch your shoulders as you're moving around your ear. No issues like that at all here with the FT5 because I think they did a pretty clever job with it. But yeah, other than that, let's talk about the comfort. So I didn't really mention as we were at the table, but this is a sort of comfort auto adjusting strap. So you will not need to adjust the fit on this headphone to your head. It's just gonna automatically fit and adjust as you put it on your head, which I am generally a fan when it's done well. And I think that Fio's actually done a really good job with that here. Like I mentioned, the ear pads are pretty roomy. Not the super roomiest, but this is a good amount of roomy. I have no complaints about the amount of space that I've got inside there for my ears. And then, well, as you might be able to see, I would say that the cups themselves are actually a little bit on the compact side versus something like the other headphones we're going to pull in. And I think that that just contributes to kind of a better balanced look on my head, to be perfectly honest. Again, I think Fio just did a really, really good job with the physical stuff. Now, the one thing that I will give a little bit of a quibble about is that the headphone's a little bit on the small side for my head. It actually fits my head okay, but you might notice that I'm basically able to stretch the comfort strap almost to its max size for it to fit my head, which is to say if your head is much bigger than mine, these probably won't fit you. Which is kind of a bummer. If you got a smaller head than mine, they'll probably be pretty good. And if you've got a head my size, they will fit you, but kind of just, all right? Yeah, I didn't have any issues in terms of comfort with the clamp. I would say the clamp is a little bit on the clampy side, but not overly aggressive, not in a way that I think many people will have issues with the comfort. It's gonna hold itself on your head well, which is something I like to see. Okay. Anything else I wanted to talk about the build? I don't think so. So let's get into talking about the sound here on the Fiio FT5. And unfortunately, this is where this headphone is. It's not awful, but it leaves some things to be desired, okay? Let's start with the tonal balance on this guy, which is where I think this thing is worst. It is kind of a bad tonal balance, if I'm honest. The tonal balance is, well, okay, let me step back and just say that, like, I'd never expect like a clean, clinical, neutral sound out of Fiio. That's not really what Fiio does. Fiio typically does either like ridiculous bass cannons for the consumer people that really want all that bass, or they'll do kind of like a more balanced tune that's still bassy, right? They do some fun stuff that's really well balanced, that has a good amount of bass in it, and I like it. But then they also do bass cannons. This guy, I would say, is kind of doesn't fit into either of those categories, although I have a feeling that they were going for they were definitely trying to make this a bassy headphone, because it does come across really kind of thick and muddy the way that this thing is tuned. Again, if you want to check it out on Squiglink, I've got that in the description down below. But overall, just say that this is a very muddy sounding headphone, thick, kind of a soft sound. Vocals are definitely pushed back. If you're looking for a vocal forward set, that is definitely not the FT5. And yet I would also describe this as a little bit on the trebly side. And that's something you can see in the frequency response. It's not necessarily like a sharp, painful treble, but it's definitely like there's like a warm brightness to it. Which if you've heard of a headphone like, let's say the Harmonic Dyne Zeus, that is kind of a familiar description I would give to that, as I would to this. So yeah, I don't know. I think that the tonality is just a little bit weird in this. When I listen to music that I'm really familiar with, it sounds off. When I listen to music that I'm not so familiar with, I can get used to it here in the FT5, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Okay. In terms of the other characteristics of the sound, not just the tonality, again, I describe this as kind of warm and muddy, which means that it is a little bit low-end dominant. But I would not say that the bass on this guy is especially punchy, especially sharp. If anything, it's pretty pillowy and soft. The tuning down low really is just not that great. You'll see if you look at the frequency response, and I don't like to review frequency responses. I like to use them to kind of like diagnose what I'm hearing in the sound rather than tell myself what I'm going to think about the sound. But if I'm using the frequency response to diagnose it, basically what you're seeing is there's just like an abundance of lower mid-range. It's just like super thick, and then the bass kind of rolls off from there. And that gives it just this, again, kind of thick, warm sound without having really impactful tight bass at all. The imaging is, as you would expect from a sound signature like that, fairly congested. It does give you maybe an enveloping sound, it's a little bit on the soft side, but frankly, I just don't really find it that engaging. Now, what I will say in its defense is that with EQ, you can get this thing to be pretty decent, because the treble, while it is a little bit on the bright side, I don't have issues with it being piercing or sharp or sibilant or anything like that. So it does take to EQ. And using EQ, I was able to tighten up the bass response and make it sound tighter. It definitely never got to the point where this thing was a technical monster or anything like that, but it got to the point where it was actually a pretty pleasant listen. And in combination with the build quality that I like, this was a pretty fun headphone with EQ. So if you're kind of going into a headphone expecting to use EQ already, maybe there's some reason here to look at the FT5. But if you're not planning to use EQ, you better hope that you like kind of like a warm, soft, thick, soupy sound, because that is what the FT5 gives you. All right, so I promised some comparisons. Let me move these things aside, make some room for some other headphones. We'll drop our XLR connector, and we'll make these comparisons, all right? And these are kind of, spanning a bit of a price range, because I don't have anything that's exactly $450 like the FT5. Instead, what I've got is I've got the Hifiman Edition XS. Retail price on this, I believe, is $500, but regularly you can find this thing for like $350. So I think this is a fair competition for the FT5. And then over here, we've got the Moondrop Para, which is another new planar headphone from a Chinese company, Moondrop. And this one is, I believe, $300. So this one's a little bit cheaper than the FT5. This one is a little bit more expensive or a little bit cheaper, depending on how you count the price. I'm gonna say it's about the same, and then this one's $450. So All right, let's get into the comparisons. I'll just quickly describe the comparisons with the Para. Now, build quality on the Para, it's not as nice as the FT5. I do kind of like the look of the Para, but it's really just quite bare bones. Like this thing looks like it was stamped in like one move by a machine. I don't hate it, I'll be honest, but it's definitely not as nicely put together as something like the FT5. Now, when it comes to sound, this thing is a lot more on the neutral, kind of vocal forward, bright side, whereas again, the FT5 is like this warm, kind of soupy, laid back, I suppose you could say, tone here on this versus the forward vocal focus set here on the Para. On paper, I definitely like the Para better. In practice, I do prefer the Para, but by only just a little bit, to be honest. I think that this thing comes across a little bit on the trebly side and a little bit kind of swishy in the treble in a way that makes this also similarly not very engaging as the FT5. Again, the FT5, if I give this thing EQ, I will prefer it to an un-EQ'd Para. But if I were to give the Para the same benefit of EQ, I'd probably be on the same place. And I was actually able to find a mod here with the Para that made me like this one quite a bit more. If you're curious, basically I just found, I have AKG K240 foam discs. You can buy them as like a replacement product on the internet. You can just put it behind, basically in between the pad and the driver, and it cleans up that treble response. Now, with this modded version, I definitely prefer the Para. Unmodded, I don't know. I don't really want to listen to either a whole lot, but they're decent. All right, so that is the sound there. And I'll warn you here with the Edition XS, again, the sound is very much still on the clean, clinical, neutral side, much closer to the Para versus the thicker, warmer, softer sound here of the Fiio. I guess I will quickly talk about the build quality. This thing feels cheap, all right? This thing does not feel anywhere near as good as the Fiio. Although, you know, it's not awful feeling. It just feels, it doesn't feel like a $500 headphone. 350 bucks, that sounds a little bit, that feels a little bit better in terms of build quality. Unfortunately, for the Fiio, when it comes to sound, the Edition XS is just way, way better, in my opinion. Not only is the tonal balance a lot more normal to my ear, again, maybe it can come across a little bit clinical and neutral, but the technical performance, the perception of the space between instruments, the definition on the leading attack of instruments, so think of like a guitar strum, a drum thwack, just kind of like that initial, like the sharpness and the definition is so good here on the Edition XS. In fact, this is like, it's maybe not a fair comparison because it's so good in the Edition XS. It's like better than a lot of headphones under $1,000. No joke. And then the bass quality, while this is the more clean, clinical, neutral sound versus the warmer, thicker sound, the bass quality is just so much better on the Edition XS that frankly, it's not really close. Like, given that this thing exists, I can't really think of a great reason to recommend the Fiio FT5, again, unless you are really into the build quality of it. But that is, I think, going to do it for my thoughts here on the Fiio FT5. Sound-wise, it's really not great. It's not awful also, though, all right? It's listenable, and with EQ, you can actually make it pretty good. I'll be honest, the build quality is saving this thing from getting a worse score. I'll give it 3 stars out of 5, a hesitant 3 stars out of 5. If you want to use EQ, it's not a bad headphone. And again, if you want this build quality, this accessory package, for 450 bucks, these headphones definitely don't have that accessory package. So they're doing some good stuff here. You can save it with EQ and then you get this really nice build quality. But if you're not planning to EQ, I'll be honest, I would definitely recommend the other headphones. But that will do it for my thoughts here on the Fiio FT5. Again, if you want to check this thing out, I've got it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and join me on Discord, which I've also got linked below, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Cheers.